2, 3, let's go!
All Natty, all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. The John Nabors Show is live from the Natty State Sports Studios.
All right, Razorback fans, you know that Arkansas lost their regional. They hosted in Fayetteville once again, but it didn't matter because they lost for the second year in a row. Their season ended in Fayetteville way too soon, and it came by the hands of SEMO. For those of you who don't understand what that stands for, it's Southeast Missouri State, 6-3. Now, there are a lot of reasons why Arkansas did not perform really well here in this regional, and we can go through them all and discussing about who to blame and everything. But the problem is that it simply comes down to this: timely hitting. That's it. Timely hitting. This was the problem that Arkansas has really had all season. And honestly, folks, it's been a problem that they've had over the past few years. I know that it's simple to just look at it that way, but when it comes to the place like Arkansas, are you going to be perfect every year? No, but you should never be one of the worst teams in the SEC in anything, ever, at all. The University of Arkansas baseball team every single year should never be ranked in the double digits in the conference in any major statistical category. But over the past few years, especially when it comes to the most important parts of hitting, they have been featured in the bottom of the barrel, in the bottom 4 of the conference. Unacceptable, shouldn't happen. And it's frustrating that we continue to talk about this and continue to try to make sense out of it, continue to try to make excuses for whoever. It doesn't matter. But the Razorback baseball team has to make some changes here this offseason. You cannot continue to have this type of performance in postseason. It is awesome that Arkansas was able to go out and win the SEC West. It's great that they won 20 SEC games once again. It's great that they had a great regular season where they were good enough to be a national seed. That's all great, but that's not what counts. That's not what's going to be remembered. Folks, the only thing that you can think back and just look at the past few years, ever since that COVID thing ended the season back in 2020. Every single year, you've had a great year. You've had a solid year in the regular season, but only one time have you actually made the College World Series, and it was the one time when you did not host a regional because you were not a national seed, because your regular season was not all that great, comparatively speaking. What are you going to remember about the 2021 season? Kevin Kopps, for sure, but you're also going to remember that you fell short. What are you going to remember about the 2023 season? You had a lot of injuries, but you fell short. And what are you going to remember about this past year? You just fell short. You just fell short. You may remember some of the things that Hagen Smith did, but you fell short. That's what people are going to remember. Not the positives, but the negatives. That's just the way it is. But a lot of this comes down to Nate Thompson. Nate Thompson, who's been the hitting coach for quite a few years, who actually replaced Tony Vitello as the hitting coach at Arkansas. He has been under a lot of fire, a lot of scrutiny. Dave Van Horn talked to the media yesterday and was discussing how he felt about Nate Thompson and the job he does.
Future, you mentioned the up and down nature of the offense all year. Would you consider like a philosophical change with the offense, and how confident are you that Coach Thompson can lead it to turn around?
He's ate up with the offense and analytics, and he really tries to train a swing. He does a great job. Probably no one works harder than him at it. You can always make adjustments, and a lot of times I think what you're talking about is maybe a little bit more of an approach. Really, in my opinion, that's always important to do that. But we got to get a little better athlete. We can't just have 8 guys that hit homers. I like guys that hit doubles, and I like guys that hit homers, but you got to have some guys that can run too, and you got to be able to create some offense the days the wind's blowing in or they're really good on the mound and you're having trouble making contact. And that's something that we want to do, and we're trying to get the right players. The 4 guys that we lost last year that were high school kids, those kids could all really run and they could hit and play. And it kind of devastated us a little bit. It threw us back. And so, always looking to get better and make adjustments.
All right, so that's enough. Like Dave Van Horn, I'm going to make this clear. Like, I'm not discrediting what Dave Van Horn is saying. I am not saying that he needs to be fired, because there may be some idiots out there that say that, and you're just that, an idiot. Dave Van Horn does not need to be fired. You're a moron if you think that. But that doesn't mean Dave Van Horn doesn't need to make adjustments. Doesn't mean that Dave Van Horn doesn't need to make changes. And he talked about it a little bit, and I think both things can be true at once. If Nate Thompson stays on at staff, that's not going to inspire any hope for anybody. I mean, just be honest with yourself as a Razorback baseball fan. If you find out that Nate Thompson is staying on for another year, how are you going to feel about that? Probably not very good. Probably not very inspired. Just being honest, because you're going to be in wait and see mode. Be like, okay, well, if you're going to keep him on, you got to change something else. And that's kind of what Dave Van Horn talked about right there. He went into what they'd be specifically looking at and changing, whether it be the philosophy, getting the athletes out there, whatever it is. But I want to give credit where credit is due to Dave. He gets it that there is some things that they need to change. There are some things that they have to do. Not that they need, they have to. They have to change if they want to be able to compete for a College World Series title. And the offense has got to be the biggest key component to this. Pitching is not always going to be perfect, but pitching is not why Arkansas struggled this year. Pitching was not an issue. If Arkansas was just middle of the pack in the SEC this year in hitting, folks, they may have won 56 games. Like, it's incredible thinking how poor that their hitting overall has been. And when it comes to not only just the batting average, but thinking about how many times they left runners in scoring position and runners left on base, you take all of those factors into one and you start putting it together like, holy crap, how did this team win the SEC West? Similar to what last year was. How did that team win in the SEC West with the amount of injuries that they have? There's a great core. There's a great culture. There's a great philosophy in the approach to the game of baseball that Dave Van Horn has built and instilled into his program. But now it's about making that little tweak to get you back to that next point and to that next level. Arkansas has had success, but that doesn't mean that you got to keep going back to the well, be like, well, it worked for us before, so let's just keep on doing it. No, Dave understands that there is some things that there's going to have to adjust. And I think two things can be true. You can say that if Nate Thompson ends up moving on or ends up leaving or anything, that can ultimately be a positive for Arkansas. But also you can look at it where if you're truly all about what you're saying, Dave, Coach Van Horn, no one call him Dave, don't even tell at me. But if you're truly serious about making those adjustments and making those changes, then okay. But it's about keeping Nate Thompson. Okay. But we were going to want, people are going to want to see that. Talk about the athletes and the athletes themselves. Okay, great. So what are the athletes going to do for you? What approach are you going to have that is going to make this team and this offense work? Well, I think there are some things that we can talk about specifically with the offense and specifically with some of the things that they can adjust here during the offseason. But before we do that, I'm really excited to announce and to promote our newest partner here at Natty State Sports. It is Hopper, Termite, and Pest. It is that time of year, folks, when the weather gets a little bit warmer. They're not called pets for nothing. Like critters, like rodents, roaches, mosquitoes. They can destroy your property, and they can also create health problems for your family, which, who wants that? Not me. But thankfully, for all of you, Hopper, Termite, and Pest Incorporated has a true solution for all of your issues. It's the pest control program that eradicates most common pests and works for many weeks before it is need to be reapplied. It even lasts through the rain. So you can check them out today and get that done, not only just for your house and your residential, but also for your businesses, any place in the not only Northwest Arkansas area, but also the North Central Arkansas area. They got places all across the state, and you can find out more by just visiting the website at www.callhopper.com. That's CALLHOPPER.com. Or you can call them today, 479-750-4070. And the best part about it is if you use promo code Natty, Natty, promo code Natty, you get $50 off your first treatment. So check them out today. It is Hopper, Termite, and Pest right here in the state of Arkansas. Get those pests out of your house because no one wants that. And do it with Hopper, Termite, and Pest. So how does Arkansas and Nate Thompson, offense, Dave Van Horn, everybody involved, make this work? And when you're talking about athletes? Well, here's kind of what Dave was, can you call him Dave? Coach Van Horn, Coach, DVH, Skip, whatever. Here's what you do. When you get the athletes, you got to be able to maybe do some small ball. I remember people complain about small ball all the time, and I was one of those people because it didn't ever seem very effective. But you can tell that there's times this year where small ball would have been extremely effective, especially when you're having trouble getting guys to score in those scoring positions, to advance some runners. And Arkansas tried to do some of the bunting, but they just didn't have the speed to be able to beat out some of those throws, to be able to take advantage of it. I mean, I even saw this past weekend in the regional, they weren't necessarily bunts, but they were little, short hits and went into the infield that could have been almost classified as a bunt. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, they got this. And then they get thrown out pretty easily. Sometimes it was great play made by the infield and the defense, but other times it's just Arkansas just did not have that top end speed that they needed to have. So you got to have some of those guys that can also not only do that, but can steal bases to advance the runner there. Arkansas on occasion stole bases, but didn't really have that next level deal. But that will be helpful. It absolutely will be helpful. So I don't want to make and pretend like that has nothing to do with anything. But still, though, at the end of the day, it has to stop when Arkansas has runners at second and third with no outs and no one scores. Or runners at the corners with one out and no one scores. That has to stop. And I'm not sitting here trying to say, like, I know exactly how to fix it. It's like, yeah, you just do this with your bat, and then there it goes. Like, no, it's a coaching thing that you got to develop and you got to maintain, but that has to change. I mean, folks, I cannot tell you how many times this year it happened. Like maybe one of these baseball statistical crazies can go in there and really dive into how many times Arkansas left a man at third base, at least at third base, with less than 2 outs. I am sure it's an inordinate amount. And those were the things that made differences many times in these games, which is still an incredible thing to think about considering how great of a record Arkansas had. Still frustrating, not making excuses. But there's got to be a way to adjust that, to fix that, to make it better. And if it's just simply getting better athletes, so be it. But you can't just continue to have what happens. And what the scary thing about it is too, folks, is that you have a lot of turnover, which we know in sports and in college baseball, especially, and with Dave Van Horn, he's had a lot of turnover. But think about some of the players you're going to be losing out on. Guys that have been extremely pivotal to not only this year's team, but guys that have run out of eligibility. I mean, you're talking about Peyton Stovall. Peyton Stovall's moving on. Hudson White's going to be moving on. You got Ben McLaughlin, who's going to be moving on. Kendall Diggs is going to be moving on. Think about Parker Rowland, Peyton Holt, Wilmsmeyer. Throw in, and that's not even the pitchers. We got a guy named Hagen Smith. I don't know if you guys heard about him. Yeah, he's moving on. Will McIntyre is going to be moving on. Cody Frank's going to be moving on. And then, I mean, that's just to name a few. I don't think I missed anybody, and I don't think I named anybody that might actually still have a chance to come back. Well, some of them do, but my point is that's still an inordinate amount of guys. And Arkansas will do just fine. They always have in recruiting. They'll do great in the transfer portal. They'll get guys in. That'll be extremely helpful. But you got to establish and you got to get that problem in the philosophy figured out first. Because there were players this year, folks, that came from other places. Like, for instance, Wilmsmeyer might be the craziest example of it. Wilmsmeyer was a guy that at Missouri, which the reason I use him as the example is because unfortunately, Missouri has to play Arkansas every year in every sport is number one, but also two, unfortunately, Missouri is in the SEC, but they went up against similar opponents. Okay. So what does that mean? You're probably wondering. It's like, okay, what does that give you? Well, here's the deal. Ty Wilmsmeyer was a guy that hit like 300, 311 even at Missouri. And this year he hit 179. That was his conference game statistics. 179. Kendall Diggs struggled so much this year, and I hate it for him because he's such a great kid, and he comes from a great family. But his batting average went down 60 points this year from last year. That's the stuff that's just going to want to pull your hair out, and you're trying to figure out why. Why is this the case? It's easy to critique. It's easy to complain. It's easy to do all these things whenever the season's now officially come to an end and it didn't go the way that you wanted. But I've talked to a lot of former players of Coach Van Horn, former players that played at Arkansas over the past few seasons and everything. And one thing that I feel like there is a mass agreement over is that the offensive approach and hitting approach has to change. They're all on board with that. And I think the fans are all on board with that. But Dave Van Horn is ultimately going to be the one that's in charge of adjusting and making it right. And since Dave Van Horn is literally one of the most well-respected and one of the greatest college baseball coaches of all time, I think he's going to get it done. I think he's going to make said adjustment because at the end of the day, he wants to win as badly as anybody. And at the end of the day, he has done tremendous at Arkansas where even though they haven't done as much as what they'd like to do in the postseason, there's not a coach that has had a more consistent regular season as far as being a national seed than Dave Van Horn. I mean, folks, if you really want to break it down, 18, 19, 21, 23, and 24. One of those seasons canceled due to the pandemic. The other one when Arkansas went to the World Series. Every one of those years, folks, Arkansas was a national seed. Okay? That's incredible success. I believe in Dave Van Horn. I believe he's going to get it done. I believe that this team is going to be a much better team, much improved team, and a better offense overall next year than what we saw this year. But because Arkansas has lost, and they lost in this fashion for the second year in a row, there is no longer going to be a benefit of the doubt going into the postseason next year. Arkansas could go undefeated, 30-0 in the SEC, win the SEC tournament, blowing everybody out, and not a single one of you are going to feel good about the postseason. Because I'm not. Because you're going to look back, well, we got bounced last year. Ooh, we got bounced the year before. In fact, the last 3 times that Arkansas has hosted regionals, it hadn't been great. Even in the regional they won, where they beat Nebraska, and that Troy Welch moment was awesome, it was a little bit of a struggle. And then it ended the next weekend against NC State. You got to start rewarding the fans for this. I know the fans don't get a whole lot of credit. People are mad and people are frustrated, and they're like, well, who cares about what the fans about winning? I agree. But the deal is that when you host regionals, you need to win. When you host supers, you need to win those. Because those are big. Those are ones that, and the reason you get rewarded and why everyone strives for that national seed is because you get to play in front of your home fans. And Arkansas just, for whatever reason, has not had it really going well for them when playing in front of their fans in postseason over the past few years. That has to change too. But my final say on this, and I want to be clear on all of it, I respect Dave Van Horn more than anybody. He is a guy that understands the game of college baseball. He is a pioneer. He is truly at his pinnacle right now, at his peak of college baseball coaching. There aren't many coaches out there like him. Yes, he's missing a College World Series title, we know. But he's as good as any coach out there, and he is good at not only winning, but also developing and putting guys into the pros. Dave Van Horn's resume speaks for itself, and I am not about to start questioning that or judging it or being overly critical of it. However, that doesn't mean that adjustments can be made. That doesn't mean you can't change. And that doesn't mean fans don't have a right to be disappointed after an early exit in the postseason once again. Yes, I know that the players are just as devastated, more devastated. Coaches too. Like, I know that. And it's not a pissing competition to try to figure out, well, who's more devastated? Who's sadder, the fans or the players? Like, that crap doesn't matter. What matters is that Coach Van Horn has so much everything at his disposal to be able to win a title here at Arkansas. And he's been doing a good job of competing for one. But the next step has to be getting this offense going in the modern day of college baseball and getting it to a point to where it is not just improved from what it's been over the past few years, but being one of the better ones in the SEC. I know you can recruit. I know you put guys in the league. I know you do all these things. But if you're a Razorback fan and you're watching the SEC tournament in the postseason and you see a graphic pop up that shows that you are 11th, 12th, 13th in major statistical categories on hitting in an offense, that ain't it. That should never, ever happen at a place like Arkansas. Razorback baseball should never be that low in the SEC in any statistic, especially offense. Hitting. Pitching is what gets you to the next level. Pitching is what can put you apart once you get to Omaha, but you can't get to Omaha if you can't score. You can't advance in postseason if you can't tee off on a SEMO pitcher that's hitting his third day, that's throwing 60-mile-an-hour curveballs. You can't get to Omaha again unless you change it. I trust Dave will do it. I believe Dave will do it. It's just going to take time. Hopefully, not too much, though. Not too much. Sorry, Razorback fans. We're going to talk about that in a second. This past academic year, we need to break it down. It was really bad, and we'll talk about that coming up next.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
All Natty, all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. The John Nabors Show is live from the Natty State Sports Studios.
Well, folks, since the Razorback baseball season has officially come to an end, it's pretty much over with and done. The academic year of 2023 and 2024 for Razorback school, but also athletics, comes to an end. And oh my goodness, was it awful. I hate to be Mr. Negative here on a Monday in June, but it was awful. This was the worst year, academic year at least, that Razorback sports have had. And I don't even think it's close. Let's take it back to football, shall we? You know, Arkansas went 4-8 in football this year. 4-8. They won their first two games. Western Carolina smoked them in Little Rock. They beat Kent State, but it did not look good. They struggled. And then they lost to BYU by a touchdown at home. And they lost to LSU by a field goal on the road. And they lost by 12 to A&M and AT&T Stadium. Then by a touchdown to Ole Miss on the road. Then by a field goal to Alabama on the road. All of those games were frustrating, sucky, stupid, dumb, frustrating, all the adjectives that you wanted to use. But there were still part of people, myself included, that I'm like, hey, they're at least competitive. They're at least playing some games, and they played the hardest stretch of the schedule. Maybe can open it up and they can finish strong. Well, they didn't, because they followed all that up by losing a game to Mississippi State 7-3. My brothers in Christ, we witnessed a game in Reynolds Razorback Stadium that ended in regulation 7-3, and it wasn't because of a lightning delay. It wasn't because of some pandemic. It wasn't because just, people just stripped down naked and start dancing on the field in protest of some cause. No, this was truly a football game that went 60 minutes in regulation and it ended 7-3. After that, you went on the road after a bye week. You beat Florida finally for the first time in Gainesville since joining the SEC in overtime. And then you just entered into the season with a just destruction against Auburn and against Missouri at home in front of your home crowd. Football sucked. It was bad. And luckily, Bobby Petrino got hired as the offensive coordinator, and that was about the biggest win of the football season in 2023. We don't know what it's going to mean in 2024 in this upcoming season. People are hopeful. People might be, putting their hands together and praying that it's going to be better. But there's no guarantees of it. In fact, there may be reasons to think otherwise. It doesn't matter. It's just the way it is. You went 4-8. It was bad this past year. But everyone's like, hey, it's okay. Basketball, though. Basketball must. Got this team, got these transfers. They're preseason top 10. They got people saying that this team's going to win the national championship. People predicting them to win the national championship. Trevin Brazile is healthy. You got Devo Davis back. You got Mekhi Mitchell, who was an experienced guy from the year before. And then you add in all these great transfers, like this guard named L. Ellis from Louisville. It was a scoring machine. Caleb Battle, who averaged all these points per game. And you got Tremont Mark, who was part of a Houston team that was just loaded and one of the best teams in the NCAA tournament the previous year. And then you had some added pieces that could add some depth, like a Jeremiah Davenport and so on and so forth and yada, yada, yada. Well, as we all know, all that excitement and all that pump and all that, just feeling good came to an end pretty quickly. You opened up in an exhibition game against Purdue, the preseason number 1 team, and the team that ended up playing in the national championship against UConn. Also had the reigning player of the year in Zach Edey coming to Fayetteville. Sure, the game didn't count, but at least was going to be a good way of measuring how your team was at that point in time. And you beat them in overtime, 81-77. Wow. You beat an experienced team with a lot of veterans that were preseason number 1 with the player of the year, reigning player of the year at home, and you beat them with a bunch of new players in an exhibition game in the early part. Shoot. If this is as bad as what Arkansas is going to be right now, we're all in on it. We're all for it. Well, time went on, and then you lost a game to UNC Greensboro at home. That was weird. Didn't really like that. But hey, slip-ups happen all the time, right? Just one game. Well, you go down to the bad boy mowers battle for Atlantis, and you need double overtime to beat a pretty sad, bad Stanford team. But hey, you won, though. That's all that matters. Then you beat Memphis, or you lose to Memphis in what was a frustrating way. And then you get beat pretty handily by North Carolina.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
All Natty, all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas.
And went to USC, and you were all left in a lurch. Now, we talked about what was the big win, or really the only win, that the football team had when the hiring of Bobby Petrino, and there is no ifs, ands, buts about it, no questions, anything. You got the biggest win, which honestly is what helps erase what happened last year, because you hired John frickin' Calipari. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. You hired John Calipari. The biggest win, and what gives you all the vibes and all the good feelings, at least for me, it gives me the good feelings that everything's going to be okay in basketball. So, yeah, the future's great, and that's great. But the season this past year was atrocious and horrible. We'll continue to talk some of these other sports because I know you guys are all looking to do. Let's talk about something good. Let's talk about something positive here. Let's talk about our friends over at BroThrow.com. Now, BroThrow, if you guys haven't checked it out, you're missing out, because all of us love to do a little friendly wagers, some sports betting, right? We like to go up and see how much money we can win and everything. But there's nothing that's sweeter than betting against your friends or betting against real people. Not to where you're just betting against the house or anything, where you could be losing some money and you have to lose some money to the juicing. No, betting against your friends, because it's straight up. BroThrow.com is what gives you that. If you go to BroThrow.com/Natty, Natty, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, where you have each and all the games going on. Like, for instance, the NBA Finals. We know it's the Celtics and the Mavericks. Go C's. But in those games, you can go in and you can see, all right, well, what's the spread? Oh, the Celtics are favored by 6.5. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Oh, but I see Chris P over here. He put $200 down on Mavericks plus 6.5. That's easy money. I'm going to take the bet going the opposite direction. I think the Celtics are going to win by 10 points. And I think that they're going to take care of business. So I'll put $200 up against Chris P. And when it comes to an end, you settle up. You can do it easily with Venmo, the Cash App. It's that simple. So head over to BroThrow.com/Natty, Natty. Also use code Natty Join the Natty State Sports Group. You can get to betting in the community, betting some money, and you're saving a ton on juice savings. It's that simple. It's that awesome. So check it out today at BroThrow.com/Natty. All right, so we talked about football being terrible, talked about basketball being terrible, and I don't think we really need to run through the baseball side of things because it's so fresh. We all know what happened. It wasn't necessarily a terrible season, but it was a disappointing one because that's how I look at it, is that football and basketball were failures. Baseball was just a disappointment. I don't think it was a failure of a season because you did win the SEC West. You were a national seed. You did have Hagen Smith. Like you won 20 SEC games. I don't think you can ever justify that as a failure. I can just it, and I do just it as a disappointment, an epic disappointment. So we don't have to run through all that, but we know what happened. We know that Arkansas was a really good baseball team that fell short at home against SEMO in Kansas State. Ugh. Two teams that they should have won easily, but they didn't, and it came to an end. But even if you take over some other things too, like, you know, I think back to something like the women's basketball. They went 18-15, 6-10 in conference. Wasn't great. And a lot of people are really getting after Coach Mike Nabors and saying that a lot of people even wanted him gone or wanted him to move on or whatever it is, but they were not happy with the way that it all went. And even softball, which has gone very popular here at Arkansas, especially lately, thanks to Courtney Deifel and the success. It wasn't a bad year for the softball team, but it wasn't great. They went 37-18, 14-10 in conference play, and they ended up going into a regional where they went 1-2. They did beat SEMO, if you can believe it, 3-2, but lost to Arizona 2-1, and then got smoked by Villanova 7-2, and that was all she wrote. So I know I went through a lot there, and I know, folks, there's other sports that have success. I know the track teams had success, so don't misconstrue what I'm trying to say. But you cannot, as a Razorback fan, look back upon the 2023-2024 school year and really be happy with anything. Like you can't look back and be like, that was a fun time, wasn't it? Like what? Like put it into context. What was the biggest highlight? What was the greatest moment? What was the most exciting thing that you saw from Razorback sports this past school year? Like seriously, was it beating Duke in men's basketball? And anything else? I mean, Hagen Smith's 17 strikeouts against Oregon State was pretty cool. That was a really good one. Anything else? I can't think of anything. And that's bad. You think about the history of Arkansas sports. Yes, certain sports have been better than others. Yes, bad years happen to teams. It's just sheer coincidence. But if you think back to some of the worst years that has happened in Razorback sports, there was always some other sport that helped counter that. For instance, 2018 and 2019 were the worst years for Razorback football ever under the Chad Morris regime. But luckily, those years were great for baseball. You know, went to the World Series, so close to winning a championship. But you're at least able to count on that. But think about even the 2017 year. You know, baseball ended in the regional against Missouri State. And football wasn't great necessarily, but no, basketball, you didn't do too bad. In fact, you kind of got screwed because you should have beaten North Carolina. Should have. But didn't happen. But still, at least you had some fun during that year. At least you went 12-6 in SEC play, 26-10 overall. Solid year. We could bring up examples all day long, but my point that I'm making is that it seemed every single year, at least in my lifetime, at least when joining the SEC, you always had something to lean back on. You always had something, some sort of sport, some sort of season. They say, hey, well, this sucked and this sucked, but this was great. Or this sucked, but hey, this and this were great. You always have had that. And this past year, you haven't. It's been a really, really tough time for Razorback fans. And I sympathize with you. I hate it. As somebody who has a company in Natty State Sports, I don't care what anybody says. People call me a homer or whatever. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we all want Arkansas to succeed, especially at the major sports, because it's better for people's moods. It's better for mental health. It's better for financially for the economy of the Northwest Arkansas area. It's better for companies like mine, like Natty State Sports, where the more excitement that there is for sports, the more people who are involved, the more that advertisers are coming in and all of that. Like, that's always a big key component of it, just to be honest. So, yeah, I mean, we all want Arkansas to do well for our own particular reasons. You as a fan, you want Arkansas to do well because you're a fan. You love them. You treat them as big a part of your life as anything. You want to punch them in the face when they upset you, but you want to hug them and kiss them, play a little tonsil hockey with them anytime that they end up doing something great. But I am hoping and I am hopeful that this next year for Razorback athletics will be a complete and total 180. But it's the old adage goes, you can hope in one hand and what in the other and see which fills up first. Can't agree more. However, even that being said, even all of you feeling that way, no matter what it is, there are still reasons to believe it'll be a complete 180. That every single one of these sports, the sports that you care about the most, every single one of them, there's reasons to believe that it will improve and that it will be better. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. But folks, I got to tell you about our friends over at Alumni Hall. Now, we know that the Razorback baseball season unfortunately came to an end. But hey, that does not mean that you got to toss all your clothes out and burn them at the stake because you're never going to wear Razorback clothes anymore. Well, maybe some of you have. But most of you are probably going to be pretty reasonable and pretty rational. Well, great news for you. Alumni Hall has everything that you could possibly want as a Razorback fan when it comes to all things apparel and decor. It's the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. When you go into the store, you will be blown away by the amount of Razorback items that they have. And I'm not just talking about for the guys. I'm talking about for men, for women, for children. They even got stuff for the pets. And they have the highest end of clothing and apparel. Something as simple and something as awesome as, say, Columbia. Ever heard of it? Peter Millar. Ever heard of it? Johnny O. Ever heard of it? Southern Tide. Ever heard of it? Oh, yeah, I know you have because you're stylish. You got good style. Well, then Alumni Hall is the place for you. They got it all. And they're conveniently located on College right there in Fayetteville. But some of you who may not be able to get over to that location, don't fear. Don't sweat it because they have a website you can go to and you can see their entire catalog. And it's nattystatesports.com/alumni hall. It's nattystatesports.com/alumni hall. You can go on there, check out their entire catalog, see all the things that they have to offer. No problems, no issues. Get it delivered to your door. Make it the ultimate Razorback shopping experience with all the things for Razorback apparel. It's Alumni Hall here in Fayetteville. All right, so hope. Those of you who are Shawshank Redemption fans, which I think everybody is, every time I hear that word, I think of that. Some of you may think of Star Wars, which is also relatable. But I'll use this example of Shawshank Redemption. Andy in that movie talked about hope. And he said that hope is a great thing, the best of things. And a great thing never dies. I think it was something like that. It's maybe not verbatim, but you get what I'm saying. Hope is all we have, folks. Why are you a fan of the Razorbacks? You could sit there and say, it's one because my dad, because my mom, because my family. I went there. I had a friend that played there. I was a fan of this player, all that. All acceptable answers. But if you really want to get deep into it and dive into it, why are you a Razorback fan? It's because you hope that one day your favorite team, the Arkansas Razorbacks, will win a national title in a sport you truly and deeply care about. You hope for that. That's why you're a fan. You want it to be great. You want it to win a championship. You want it. You want it so bad you can taste it. But it's so difficult to do. It's dadgum near impossible. But that's why you're a fan, is because you hope. And when you hope for something, what are you hoping to get out of a return? Pardon the expression. Your hope or your faith, whatever you want to put, you put it into that team and into that sport because you know what the feeling is going to be like. You know what the feeling is going to be like when that time comes. Or at least you have an idea of what that feeling will be like. I hate to get biblical on y'all. And I'm not being disrespectful and not being sacrilegious or anything. I'm just trying to make a comparison, which I think is a good one. We'll see. See how this works out. But being a fan is like striving to get to heaven. You know, you put a lot of faith in it, you put a lot of hope in it, and you just hope that, when that day comes, it's going to be as amazing and as incredible as I believe and that I've been told and that I've seen and that I've experienced. Like you just believe in it. And it's going to be that way. It's going to be a feeling you've never had before, and it's a feeling that you just want so badly. That's like the whole reason of being a fan. You want to be a fan, and you are a fan because you know one day, whenever that happens, and hopefully it happens soon, but that one day when it all goes down, that you are going to feel that great, ecstatic energy that you've never experienced before and that only select few get to experience. That is what you want. That is how you feel. That, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, that, my friends, is what it's all about. And that's what you strive to have. And so when you saw this past year go the way it did, got the thunders out there. When you see this past year and the way that it went down, I use the expression, oh Lord, it's hard to be hopeful when you're an Arkansas Razorback fan. Because it feels that way. The years that you feel like they're going to be great end up not being great. The teams that you feel like got it all end up falling short. The times that you feel you can finally have something over your relatives that are fans of other schools or whatnot, that, that time where you're like, hey, we got this. When you can't say that, it makes it tough. It's hard to have pride in something that you're not proud of. But I'm telling you that this upcoming year, at least for the three major sports, potentially, and in some cases, I'd even guarantee, are going to be better than what it was a year ago. You went 4-8 last year in football. That sucked. You don't want to ever experience that again. You don't want to go through that again. I don't want to go through that again. But because of Bobby Petrino, because of the offensive changes that you've made, because of seeing how close and competitive you were last year to a lot of these teams that were really good, and considering the home schedule you have, will it be a 6-win increase getting to 10 wins? I'm not going to bet on that. But will it be better than 4-8? Yeah, it will be. I'm going to bet on it. Anything basketball. Past year, crap. Especially when you had the previous 3 years where you went 8-3 in the NCAA tournament. 3 straight Sweet 16s, 2 Elite 8 appearances. Some of the most fun that I know I've ever had as a Razorback fan, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun for you too. But you went 16-17 this past year. Is it going to be better next year? Oh, I guarantee it will be. That we all can guarantee it will be. Seeing the team that John Calipari's putting together, the roster, the talent, and the fact that you got frickin' John Calipari as your head coach. Yeah, And Kentucky fans always say, all right, good luck losing the first round of the tournament. Well, guess what, morons? Arkansas didn't make the tournament last year. So as long as they get to the tournament, that's at least improvement. Now, granted, you want to advance. We all want to advance. I think Arkansas is going to be a good enough and talented enough team to make a run into the Final Four. I do. But I also know that it's going to be an improved year from last season. Arkansas is not going to go 16-17 or worse. I think we all feel good about that. And then in baseball, I know I talked about the offensive adjustments that Van Horn needs to make or that everybody wants him to make and everything. But I'm telling you, if he makes those, which I believe he will, but if he makes those and really puts it in and gets some big-time players out of the transfer portal, which I think they will, gets the much-needed help in those particular positions, which I believe he will, get some pitching. You're losing out on so many guys, which you will. Yeah, I think that it can be better than Arkansas going 1-2 in postseason next year. Yeah, I think it can be a little bit better and will be better than what we saw this past season. I'd guarantee it. I'd put money on it. If I could bet on it right now, bet on Razorback baseball making it further than 1-2 in a regional in postseason next year, I am. I'm betting on it. Now, you can go into women's basketball. Is there much confidence in that? Maybe not. Softball, maybe so. But when we're talking about the big three sports, reasons to believe, reasons to get excited, reason to think that it's all going to be okay. That's why. It's going to be better, folks. It's going to be better. It sucks to be a Razorback fan sometimes. It does. I have grown up being a Razorback fan and a Jets fan. All I've known in my life of sports has been disappointment. But I continue to strive on and continue to hope. Because I think one day it's going to happen. I believe it. It's not always going to be perfect. Years aren't always going to go the way I want. And I hope to never experience a year that we just had, where there was just nothing good, nothing positive, at least what happened on the field or on the court. Just nothing really to point to talk trash about. But I believe and I hope. And I think Arkansas has the right tools in place and the right people in place to make it better. Hang in there, hey, Razorback fans. Just hang in there. I know a lot of you aren't going to bail. Like it's not like you're filing for a divorce against your favorite team. Although some of you may have drawn up the papers for it. You're still going to be a Razorback fan. But truly ask yourself, folks, ask yourself, do you feel better now about next year than what we saw and witnessed this past year? And you can take it by sport. Do you feel better about football? I mean, I do. Maybe you don't. But I think you could make logical and reasonable explanations as to why the team's going to win more than 4 games. Basketball, is it going to be better? If any of you think basketball's not going to be better, then maybe you need to file for those divorce papers. And baseball, well, we'll have to see. It's too new, but would it surprise you if it did? Would it surprise you at all if next year Arkansas made it further than 1-2 in the regionals? Would it surprise you? Absolutely not. So that's my whole point. Is just hang in there, Razorback fans. It's going to be okay. It sucks now, but it's going to be all right. Let's have some fun this summer, huh? Enjoy the time with family and going out and traveling, going to the beaches and to the pools, and just enjoy that time. Football season will be here before we know it. And I know I know that all of us, me included, and especially me, is going to talk ourselves into why this team's going to win 8 games. Maybe. But just enjoy your time, folks. Put this past year behind you and look forward to the future. Because the future in all Razorback sports is bright. Some bulbs may be brighter than others, but it's bright. Just hang in there.
1, 2, 3, let's go!
All Natty, all the time. Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. The John Nabors Show is live from the Natty State Sports Studios.
All right, I know that the Razorback baseball season is over with, and, there's still people that may be watching college baseball. I probably won't be one of those that continue to watch college baseball, but still, there's always some interesting things that come from it, and that people end up having certain coaches and certain programs, whatever, who wins the tournament, who wins the World Series. Who knows? Who knows how it's all going to go down? But I wanted to bring this up because I feel like NIL is always something that's being discussed. And there was a particular coach for the Coastal Carolina baseball team. His name's Gary Gilmore. He's been a coach for a long time in college baseball and is very well respected. Coastal has had a lot of success, and he is going to be ending after this season, after 29 years as a head coach. He won a national title back in 2016, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. But this was his final press conference that he was having after the NCAA baseball tournament, and he just went in on NIL and the destruction of it and everything. Let's just take a listen from what he had to say.
Had a system where everyone was a free agent every year. Do you realize what chaos would be? It would go away. You wouldn't have those 3 sports. If you did, baseball, it'd be the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers, Texas, and the rest of the teams couldn't compete because they would spend every amount of money they needed to spend to do it. And that's what's going on right now. There's not a level playing field. It's been just ridiculous for me. Much as I'm going to miss the kids, and I'm going to miss the heck out of them, dealing with that mess, I'm telling you right now, the fact that there are teams in college baseball giving $2+ million of NIL money away. Come on, man. It's just, a real system would be one where they get a little bit of money, but then they put money in trust and this and that, so that you have like the horror stories you see in the NFL and in different places. Major League Baseball gets big signing bonuses, and boom, 5-10 years later they're broke. They don't have a dime. They don't have an education. They don't have anything. There has to be a better way. It's not just who can raise the most money and give it away. There has to be a better way because, like I said, professional sports would go in the toilet in a hurry if we used this system. This is me as a college coach. This is what I have to deal with. You can sign your returning players to a scholarship which binds you to them, but they can come around in July and go, I'm going to go in the portal. I'm up in the Cape and somebody's going to give me a big NIL deal, and you were held accountable, coach. You had to honor that scholarship you gave me, but now I'm going to go in the portal and leave you hanging. That's a messed up system. I hope somebody fixes it. I'm be honest with you, that part I'm going to enjoy that, to be very honest with you.
So, okay, few things that he dove into. First off, I do agree with some of what he had to say. Not all, but some. There are some things that go on in college sports with the NIL that needs to be fixed, needs to be changed, needs to be adjusted. Absolutely. But I don't agree with some of the approaches that he had, or maybe just because it came like he was just completely and totally out of touch. Like when he's talking about if you had a system like professional sports where everyone was a free agent every year, do you realize what chaos that would be? The leagues would go away. You wouldn't have those sports. If you did, baseball would be the Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers, Texas, and the rest of the teams couldn't compete. That's what's going on right now. And I'm like, what? What? What are you talking about? Like the idea that some coaches and some people about NIL think that the NIL has made it to where only the richest of programs and the ones that pay the most money in NIL are the teams that are winning championships is simply not true. Now, granted, does it give you advantage to not having NIL? For sure. having more NIL than no NIL is a huge advantage. Just like having facilities is an advantage. Just like having, a great campus is an advantage. Just a great coach, the best of coaches is an advantage. Like advantages are everywhere across college sports. There are some schools that can't afford to have the baseball facility that the University of Arkansas has, but Arkansas has it. Is that not an advantage? Does that not the rich get richer? I mean, if you're a baseball player and you're looking at, Giddy City, Alaska, or you're looking at the University of Arkansas to play baseball at, you're not going to look at that facility that was like, oh, yep, this is where I'm going. Of course you are. Of course you are. So the idea that just the teams with the most money is what's going to be like just putting out all these other programs is just simply not true. And I'll look at UConn basketball. They've won the title back-to-back years. We don't know the exact amount, but is anybody wanting to go out on a limb and think that they paid the most for NIL? Like, honestly, in all of college basketball, does anyone think that UConn is paying the most? No. I don't. LSU, Georgia. Now take some of the other programs that made it into the college football playoff. Throw in a USC if you want to when they've made it there. Just at least in the NIL era. Florida State, a lot of people like, are all those programs the only programs that are paying big time money to NIL? I'm pretty sure Texas A&M, pretty sure Florida is, and they're not getting sued. What'd that get them? So the point is like, I get in theory and I get in the mindset that a lot of these coaches and these people have about the NIL that they think, oh my gosh, this is the way it's going to be and it's horrible. I don't buy it. I don't see it that way. Listen, there are a lot of things about sports that we could sit here and talk about, things that we like, things that we don't like, whatever. But to me, I look at, like, for instance, what Arkansas is doing. I think they're doing a good job. I think it could be better. I think they're going to make it better. But does that mean, like in basketball with John Calipari, that they're just going to flood with NIL and then suddenly, boom, you're going to win a national championship? Maybe. But I don't think that they're going to do it just because of the money. Probably because they have a good coach, good program, good players. Takes a lot to go on there. But then he goes on and says that it's not a level playing field. The fact that there are teams in college baseball giving $2 million of NIL money, I mean, come on, man. What are you talking about? Who cares? Like, what does that mean? It's not a level playing field. Okay. How often has it been a level playing field before NIL? That's what I don't understand. I mean, listen, sports are great. And a lot of times you see teams like a Coastal Carolina win a national championship, and it's awesome. But the idea that all these other teams, like the programs that have been able to invest more money into their baseball programs, haven't had success already. Like LSU, for instance. LSU has won titles before NIL. Why? Because they had the most money. They had the better facilities. They had a great coach. They attracted great players. It's just how it is. But then when he went on to suggest that an alternative system where players got most of their NIL money in a trust, what would that do, though? Like, what's the problem is that going to solve? Again, I think that you can have it both ways. There's some things you can not like about NIL, and there's some things that you can like about NIL. And there's ways that you feel like you need to improve it or that you want to improve it. Like, absolutely, I'm all for that. I'm down for that, and I think that's real, and I think that's a good thing. But this idea, this ridiculous notion that now, only now, with NIL, has there been an uneven playing field in college sports is just absurd. It's dumb. It's dumb. And I want to continue to talk about some of the stuff with NIL and reiterate some things here in just a second. But folks, I wanted to tell you about always our friends over at Superior Contracting and Development, where they have a new website. You can go to superiorcontractingar.com. Check out all the great things that they got going on. Listen, we know that the storms that transpired here in the state of Arkansas last week were very devastating to a lot of people. And we know that insurance companies are required to restore homes to pre-storm condition. Like those of you who had damages from this, that's what insurance companies are required to do. And Superior is seasoned with working with all those insurance companies to make sure that you get taken care of. And they've been helping homeowners get everything that they should be getting out of their insurance claims guaranteed. And the thing is it's not even just Northwest Arkansas or even the state of Arkansas, but also in Oklahoma, also in Texas. All these places that have had the damages from these storms, Superior Contracting and Development is going to be here for you and help you. So if you're one of those companies that has been, or excuse me, one of those places that have been dealing with insurance companies that is needing to get back to having your home, your place, your building, your residence, whatever, get it back to pre-storm condition and have it done the right way, contact Superior Contracting and Development. You can call them today at 501-453-3053. That's 501-453-3053. Or you can also check them out online at superiorcontractingar.com. But no matter what it is, when it comes to making it to where your interior and exterior needs get met in your home, always do it with Superior Contracting and Development out of Arkansas. Okay, so the NIL continues to be a thing and continues to be a problem, continues to be a thing that people complain about and just, constantly just feel like they're never happy or satisfied or anything like that. Here's my deal, is that if you are someone who likes sports and wants to see sports succeed and to see them succeed at the highest of levels, then this is the way you need to do it. This is what's for you, okay? Because overall, a place like Arkansas, for instance, we'll just talk about them since that's who we talk about mostly. At a place like Arkansas, did they have advantages over other schools? Sure. Do they still have advantages over other schools? Sure. But what has helped Arkansas in a place like Arkansas, maybe more so than anything? It's been NIL over the past few years. I know we talked about this past year being terrible for sports, but it's not due to NIL or lack thereof. I mean, you just had Tyson Chicken come on here and start throwing down money on NIL for basketball like it's going out of style, like it's going out of business. And people are like, well, it's terrible for the schools. It's terrible for college sports. Is it? Is it? It sounds like the only people that really complain about this or the people that are upset by it are the people that are mad for two reasons. Either one, they've been dominant at the top of the leaderboard and other people have caught up because of NIL, or two, they're at places that don't have NIL and they get frustrated because there's nothing they can do about it. Places that are doing well in the NIL era of college sports seem to enjoy it, seem to be doing just fine. So my thing to all of you is, yes, it needs to adjust, it needs to change, there needs to be more regulation on it, all of that stuff. But also, there needs to be an understanding. There needs to be an understanding that there are things about NIL that are great and that it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But more importantly, for all of you fans out there, I will say this. For all you fans of whatever school it is, even if you're watching this video and you're not a Razorback fan, that's fine. But your school that you follow, that you root for, you got it in your mind? Okay. Now, of that school, pick your favorite sport. Favorite sport to watch. One you care the most about. Football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is. You got it? Okay. So now you got your favorite school in mind and you got your favorite sport of that school in mind, right? Okay. Now imagine that team, that school wins a national championship. Maybe they have already. Maybe they're about to. But just imagine that in that sport, this upcoming year, they win a championship. It's a great feeling to have. It's good fantasy, right? Right. Okay, now, think back or think ahead to what your first reaction would be when it happens, then your second, then your third, then your fourth, then your fifth, and so on and so forth. Think about all the things that you're going to do, all the things you're going to say, the people you're going to call, how much money you're going to spend, going to the parades, going and buying shirts, apparel, all that stuff. Think about all of that. is at any point in your plan, in your literal fantasy of your team winning a championship, is anything going to enter into your mind of saying, yeah, but how much were they making? Are you going to say, well, you know, it's nice and all to win the national title, but it's a little spoiled, a little tainted. Got an asterisk next to us because these kids made money. No, you're not. That's the whole point that I have in this. As a fan of a team, you shouldn't care how much these players are making. You should care, are they winning or losing? And if coaches are upset and frustrated by it, I get it. I get it. So they need to do things and go through the proper channels to try and make it better. Fight for that. Go to the governments, whatever it is. Be fair and reasonable, but fight it. Or you just adapt, adjust, and get on board and do it. At the end of the day, someone's going to win a championship. Someone's going to win a championship. So that's still going to go on. They're still going to be wearing your jersey, your favorite jersey. They're going to be wearing that logo on it. So instead of constantly finding ways to end it, to get rid of it, to complain about it, to whatever, instead of doing that, folks, just enjoy it. Embrace it. Have fun with it. To me, that's what's going to be the best thing about it. Those particular things. Don't be like this coach where it's just, oh, it's all terrible. Kids making money. Rah. No. Kids should make money off their name, image, and likeness, just like me or you. All of us should have that right. But I'm not going to complain about it. And I don't want to complain to the universities I don't want to, no. It's in the rule. Go do it. Do the best you can. Raise that money. However you need to do it. Ask those big donors. Make promises, make deals, have sponsorships, whatever. Do whatever it takes to succeed. Because nobody's going to accept any excuses when your team and your sport is struggling of winning on the court or on the field. Find a way. Simply find a way. And that's all I got to say.